I used to think a marriage could survive anything as long as the two people in it told each other the truth fast enough. Not perfect truth. Nobody has that. Just the kind where you stop the lie before it grows legs. We weren't a dramatic couple. We were a grocery list on the fridge, Sunday laundry, split the last fry kind of love. People said we were good together, and I believed them because I didn't have a better measure than how easy it felt to share a couch. My name is Victor. I'm 42 and manage facilities for a small college. HVAC schedules, key card systems, a calendar with more colored blocks than sense. My ex-wife now is Lila. She's 39, an editor for a mid-sized publisher who could turn a mess of paragraphs into something that walked in a straight line. She had the kind of focus I envied and feared. She could look at a page so hard it told her the parts it wished it were. We met 10 years ago after a broken elevator forced a bunch of us to take the stairs. There's a punchline in there somewhere. I cracked a joke about step goals, she groaned, but then smiled anyway. 2 months later, we were timing pasta and arguing about which is better, ending a sentence with a period in a text or letting it hang. Her, the period matters. Me, it reads as angry. We still signed our vows with a .her win. If there's a beginning, it's probably the calendar. Lila started using a new app for her book club meetings, some platform called Gather that let them reserve rooms at neighborhood spaces. The invites were automatic. They slid onto our shared calendar with titles like Chapter 7 Narrative Tension. Wednesdays, 6:30 to 8:30. I loved that she had joy that wasn't me. I set reminders to heat leftovers so the kitchen smelled like something welcoming when she came back. The first weirdness was small. The book club began lasting an extra hour. She'd text at 8:20, running long, great debate tonight. It wasn't the time, it was the tone. Lila loved debate, but running long wasn't her language. She usually wrote, everyone's spiraling over endings again. I told myself people evolve and to stop seeing a ghost in every pronoun. About a month into the new schedule, she asked me to pick up a package from an Amazon locker near the bakery because the publisher sent proofs and I don't want them sitting on the stoop. The code didn't work the first time. A man behind me offered help and punched it in like he did it every day. The door clicked open. Inside was not a box of proofs. It was a canvas tote with a monogram that wasn't her initials. RM. The stranger looked at me and said, "Oh, wrong locker." His face did that thing where someone is trying to read your life in a glance. I mumbled something, grabbed the tote, and left with both the wrong bag and the right dread. At home, I set the tote on the counter. Lila came in an hour later, cheeks pink from the night air, hair smelling like a floral she'd never worn, cooler, greener, almost bitter. She saw the bag and froze. "That's not mine," she said carefully, like stepping around a sleeping dog. I told her about the locker mix-up. She nodded too fast. "I'll handle it tomorrow." She lifted it by the straps and tucked it into the hall closet. We ate in a silence both of us pretended was about salt. Over the next weeks, signs multiplied the way ants do. You see one, and suddenly you realize the floor's moving. Lila put a new passcode on her phone. Her book club, chat usually a chaos of gifs, went quiet in front of me. She stepped onto the balcony for calls more often and came back with that sharp floral on her clothes. One night she showed me a clip from a new author she was excited about, a debut collection of essays by a woman named Ray. When I asked what she loved about the writing, she said, "She doesn't apologize for wanting two things at once." I asked, "Like what?" And Lila shrugged and said, "Like being seen and being left alone," and changed the subject. I tried to respond the way good husbands respond. I offered counseling. I learned to make the spicy noodles she loved without overdoing the chili oil. I told her I missed her without turning it into a courtroom. She smiled and said, "I'm here." And I realized how little that sentence can hold. The first proof wasn't a lipstick smudge or a receipt. It was Google Docs. We have a shared drive for taxes and meal plans and random things like the time I over-optimized our camping packing list. One afternoon, while trying to find an old PDF of our lease, I saw a folder I didn't recognize. The corridor. Inside was a single document titled Corridor House Style. It wasn't ours. It was a private doc, locked to an email that wasn't Lila's Ramey, the rest hidden by security. A side comment thread was visible by accident. Little colored bubbles that said things like L, this line is too on the nose, and R, you're right, soften. The last comment, time-stamped 1:12 a.m., read, I wish you were here to say that. A reply followed, I am, just not there. I closed my laptop like it had a temperature. That night, Lila was funny and attentive. The way you are when you return from somewhere you know you shouldn't have gone. She kissed me while the pasta water boiled. She laughed at my joke about our neighbor's new obsession with leaf blowers. She tucked her feet under my thigh while we watched a cooking show. Then at 10:30, her phone buzzed. She looked at it, and her mouth did a small, involuntary smile, the pure kind that doesn't take instructions from the face. She caught me seeing it and wiped the expression away like a board. Book club planning, she said. The lie was generous. It aimed to leave both of us dignity. I wasn't ready to confront. I told myself I needed language, not just suspicion. I started noticing the names Lila said in passing. Ray came up in 5 different contexts. A new client, a book club friend, a writer whose podcast sounds like a secret. I Googled the podcast and found it, The Corridor. The artwork, a blurred photo of a narrow hallway with blue light at the end. Episodes with titles like Doors You Didn't Know Were Open and Editing Your Life. The host was Ray Merritt. Her voice had the warmth of a blanket and the precision of a scalpel. In episode 3, she read an email about a relationship in a tunnel and said, the problem isn't where you are, it's that your feet think they're standing still. I listened and felt like a man trying to read weather patterns in a glass of water. The night the line snapped was accident and timing. I woke at 2:11 a.m. to the sound of laughter, soft, conspiratorial, coming from the living room. I patted down the hall. Lila's laptop cast a spill of light on the couch. 2 voices came from the screen. A video call, half whispered. I sent you the new draft, Ray said. Don't look at the title. It's temporary. You'll hate it. Lila laughed. I don't hate it. I don't like who it makes me. Ray said, I like that version of you. There was a pause in which 1,000 inches happened. Lila said so quietly I almost missed it. I wish I didn't. Ray replied, then don't. Let me borrow the version you can't use at home. I'm not proud of what I did. I stood there and listened to my wife breathe like a person in love. Then I did nothing. I went back to bed. I lay awake until dawn and watched the ceiling and planned an honest conversation I didn't actually want to have. What I asked at breakfast was small and pointed. Is Ray the same person as your book club friend? Lila took too long to answer. She's a writer I'm helping, she said. It's work. I said, at 2 a.m? She said, deadlines. I said, and the laughing? She said, you always said you wanted me to bring home joy. It was a perfect reply. It turned my concern into proof of my own request. I nearly admired it. The first confrontation drove us to therapy. I said, I feel like I'm losing my wife to a person I haven't met. Lila said, I have a friend who listens to me and doesn't fix me. Our therapist, a woman named Ava, who looked like she'd invented the word holding, said we needed to reintroduce curiosity into the marriage. We did exercises that felt like both kindergarten and surgery. For a few weeks, the air sweetened. Lila put her phone away during dinner and let me see her eyes again. She sent me a link to a couch I'd wanted and said, order it, even though it's ridiculous. She also moved her book club nights to Fridays, which she explained as fresh energy. I was grateful for crumbs. The physical betrayal arrived slowly, too. First, she started changing before book club, more carefully, like she was dressing for photos no one would take. A black dress I'd never seen. A shade of lipstick she said she hated years ago. Then came a new habit. She'd shower as soon as she came home. Her hair smelled like hotel shampoo. The green perfume curdled into something I recognized but couldn't place. A scent I would later identify as the lobby of a boutique hotel on Fremont, with plants in every corner and a bar that served chamomile gin. The body knows before the brain is ready. The night I learned too much, it was because of a door code. At the college, I manage access control, so I notice codes the way a musician hears keys. Lila asked if I could help her test something on our smart lock. She wanted a custom pin for the dog walker, though we don't have a dog. I set it up because saying no would have been an accusation. The code she chose was 0812, our anniversary. I watched that number activate at 11:18 p.m. on a Friday while she texted, "Running over, don't wait up." I saw it deactivate at 1:03 a.m. These systems tell stories. The story was an entrance, an exit, a man sitting in the kitchen with his hand on the table so he wouldn't break anything he cared about. When she came in, I was still awake. I said, "How was book club?" She set her bag down and smiled her stage smile. "Loud," she said. I nodded and asked gently, "Who did you give our wedding date to?" Her spine reacted before her face did. "What?" I showed her the log. She looked at it, at me, at the hallway. "Ray needed to get something, she left here," she said. "She's forgetful." I said, "Ray was here?" She hesitated. "With me, for 5 minutes." The lie was kind again. It tried to protect us. I said, "Did you kiss her?" The question surprised me by being the only one that mattered. Lila breathed out, and it sounded like surrender. "Yes," she said. "Once." I looked at the timestamps again. "Once can take 2 hours," I said. She closed her mouth like a fist. We slept apart after that. I moved to the couch that had once been for Sunday naps and learned how pain feels when it doesn't have a door to leave through. In therapy, Lila said the phrase emotional affair like it could keep itself in a smaller category if the right adjective held it down. Ava asked what made Ray different. Lila said, "She sees the parts of me I turned down to not take up too much space." I asked if I was the dimmer switch. Lila said, "You were the person I didn't want to disappoint." I said, "You did anyway." I told her she had to end it if she wanted to stay. She did on speaker, in front of me, a performance that sounded true. "I can't do this," she said to Ray. "I love my husband." Ray's voice was calm, maybe prepared for this scene. "You also love the you I met," she said. "Decide which love gets the real estate." Lila said, "Don't talk like your essays." Ray said, "Okay, I'll miss you." And that was that for 2 weeks. 2 weeks is how long it took for book club to mutate into quick coffee, and for quick coffee to turn into I ran into her, and for chance to become a habit again. When I asked for transparency, Lila gave me summaries that were true enough to pass a cursory audit. "We talked," she'd say. "She's struggling." When I asked with what, she said, "Wanting the wrong things." I was the wrong thing by then. I understood the casting. I found the physical proof in the least cinematic way. I was collecting laundry from the bathroom, and her blouse slipped off the hook. A small square packet fell from the pocket, the kind hotels put in a tiny drawer with a note about responsibility. It was unopened. My hands shook anyway. I put everything back where I found it and sat on the floor and watched my breath move the hem of the shower curtain. People on the internet say confront immediately. They never tell you what to do with the minutes before the door opens. That night I didn't ask a question so much as I declared a boundary. "I can't be married to 2 people, I said. "One of them has to leave." Lila cried the way people cry when they're grieving the thing they're walking away from and the thing they're keeping. She said she'd cut Ray off. For real this time. She meant it. A part of her meant it. But meaning and doing are different verbs. The last chapter of our marriage is a string of scenes I can tell in any order, and they make the same sense. There was the dinner with friends where Lila barely spoke to me, but lit up when a story reminded her of a line she'd read, Ray's line. There was the afternoon I came home early with ice cream because she'd had a bad day. The living room smelled like the hotel lobby, and she was making the kind of tea you only make when you're comforting someone else. There was the day the State Board of Ethics emailed me because of a complaint I didn't know someone had filed, asking if I had knowledge of a host of a relationship podcast conducting a relationship with a married guest. I didn't respond. Then I did. Then I regretted both. There was the morning I opened the door and found a package for Ray on our stoop because she'd started using our address as a drop. It felt like a flag. When the end came, Lila didn't cheat nobly. She didn't pick the perfect moment or craft a monologue that absolved us. She sat at the kitchen table with a mug she used to say, made coffee taste better, and said, "I'm leaving." No accusation in it, no drama, like announcing a weather change. She said, "I can't be the person you deserve and the person I keep becoming with her." I asked, "And which one do you choose?" She said, "The one who knows exactly what she wants even if everyone hates her for it. I said, I won't hate you. She said, I know. That's part of why this is harder. She moved out, took clothes, the stacks of marked up manuscripts, the plants she coaxed back from the dead in February, left the mugs. Fig spent 2 days going room to room and then decided his loyalties were shallow and food-based. I boxed up our wedding photos and then unboxed them because erasing as a coping strategy didn't sit right on me. Friends picked sides they insisted weren't sides. My sister offered to help me throw things and then showed up with lasagna instead because she knows rage burns fast and hunger lasts. Ray messaged me once, a single paragraph. You don't know me. I didn't plan to be someone who broke something good, but I also didn't plan to meet a person and have every part of me switch on. I hope you find the love that looks back without asking you to dim. It was terrible and beautiful and none of my business. I didn't reply. She messaged Lila a photo of a doorway at the end of a hall with the caption, "Here." Lila posted it to her private story. I muted it. I didn't block her because I didn't want to turn my life into a set of locked doors. The twist happened after. I assumed it would be sadness, then anger, then a straight staircase up. It wasn't. It was grief braided with relief. I missed Lila's jokes, the way her eyebrows make decisions before her mouth does, the comfort of a night routine we built one unremarkable year at a time. But I stopped bargaining with my own eyes. I stopped reading numbers as coincidences. I stopped asking my chest to swallow evidence and call it love. I healed in the boring ways. Phone on, do not disturb at midnight, runs I hated that became tolerable. Dinners with my brother where we didn't mention marriage at all. I bought a ridiculous couch, yes, the one I'd wanted, and ate cereal on it like I was a kid who'd won a prize. I learned to sleep without listening for a key. Months later, Lila and I met at a cafe to sign the last of the papers because the internet refuses to solve everything. She looked lighter and older at once. The perfume was gone. She smelled like rain and something warm. We were nice to each other, the way people are when they don't want to add a bad final page to a book they once loved. She said, I'm sorry for the lies. I said, me too, for the times I pretended I believed you because it felt safer. She touched the edge of the table. I did love you, she said, and I said, I know. I loved you too. That's not in dispute. We signed. We hugged like colleagues. She left first. I watched her cross the street and become the size of someone else's story. I still listen to the corridor sometimes when I want to hate something and end up learning instead. Ray's voice remains precise, but I hear the compromises now, the places where an essay keeps a secret for a person who needed a version that sounded less guilty out loud. On an episode about endings, she said, sometimes you leave because staying would be a lie, and sometimes you stay because leaving would be a performance. I paused the episode and laughed without humor, because language can be so tidy while life bleeds on the carpet. I didn't file a complaint against anyone. There is no victory lap at the end of this. Lila and Ray moved in together, I think. A friend said she saw them at the Saturday market picking out peaches with a concentration of surgeons. I hope they are kind to each other in the mornings. I hope they remember to buy foil. Here is what I know now and didn't know then. Emotional betrayal is not less real than a body in a bed. It's just quieter and easier to rationalize. It becomes physical when you stop asking yourself who you are and start outsourcing the answer to someone who says all the right words. I also know that love is not supposed to feel like managing a PR crisis in your own home. The truth doesn't always land soft, but it does land steady. Last week, the college had a power outage, and I spent 7 hours with my team in a basement, making the building behave like it remembered its purpose. When the lights came back, a student cheered like we'd returned the sun. I went home to an apartment that held my shape and a cat that can't keep a secret if his life depended on it. I made noodles and got the chili oil right. I opened our old shared calendar out of habit, and it loaded to an empty week. For a second, I felt the familiar hollow. Then I opened my own calendar and added something no one else could move. Wednesday, 6:30, walk to the river, no phone. I went. The water was ugly and honest. The air smelled like cold metal and hope. I stood there long enough for my breath to slow down and for the part of me that used to check every door to realize the only one I needed to check was the one I came through. The other night, I found the old monogram tote in the hall closet while looking for a screwdriver. RM. It still had a faint green scent. Inside was a pen, a book of matchsticks from the hotel bar, and a note in Lila's handwriting that said, "Return to Ray." I sat on the floor and considered driving it across town to the address I shouldn't know and knocking on a door I didn't want to see open. I didn't. I put the tote in a donation box. Someone else can use it to carry something ordinary. I am done being the courier for a story that doesn't belong to me. If you've read this far because your own calendar has started filling with nights that don't make sense, I won't tell you what to do. I'll tell you what helped. Write down what you know and what you feel, and don't let anyone swap the columns on you. Ask for the truth once, clearly. If you have to keep asking, that's an answer. Let your body believe what it already knows. When the person you love tells you they need space, look at how they measure it. Is it room for both of you to breathe, or a hallway that leads to someone else's door? I thought endings were loud. Now I know they can be a quiet decision to stop being a bad witness to your own life. I'm not heroic. I'm not enlightened. I'm just a man who goes to the river on Wednesdays and doesn't check anyone's location on his phone. I'm a man who buys peaches and eats them over the sink so the juice doesn't stain the ridiculous couch. I'm a man who, when the light hits the kitchen counter at 4 p.m., sees crumbs and wipes them away and doesn't pretend it was always clean. I'm a man who still believes a marriage can survive almost anything, except the moment when one person chooses a version of themselves that can't love the other without dimming. And if that happens, I believe in surviving anyway. If you made it to the end of this story, thank you. It means a lot. New stories like this one are posted every single day, so make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss one. And if this story touched you, please give it a like. It really helps more people find our content.